There are many board games out there. Some of them are innovative pieces of art, and some of them just rip off a TV show and hope that you will love them just as much as you love that TV show or book or computer game or what have you. These are things that existed as a different intellectual property before arriving in their board game form, and we're going to find out if any of them are any good, if any of them deserve to stand among the rest, or if they all deserve to be burnt for all eternity. This is the Room and Board Deathmatch, where we are going to find out the best IP game of all time by pitting them against each other, March Madness style. Let me frame myself up so they can start floating by my head. These are the games. We have a bunch of glorious competitors over the month of June. We were voting every day over on the Room and Board Patreon between one or the other in this March Madness bracket style. You know the drill by now. We've been doing it for 2.5 years, and it is time to find out which of these games comes out on top and which of these games isn't worth your time, even if you desperately love the IP. And I think IP games are interesting creatures because there are some games out there that exist wholly as amazing games, or sometimes better than the IPs themselves, and have taken on a cult following. And I think there are some where you really need to be a fan of that IP to even get anything out of it. And I think there's also some that say, hey, you're a fan of this IP? Great. Purchase this thing, please. Is it good? Nope. And I think we have all types in this bracket. So make your votes right now. Which of these games do you think is going to come out on top? Drop it down in the comments down below. I know you got thumbs. If you have no means of communicating on the internet, I totally understand, or it's laborious, you're exempt. But for everybody else, get your votes down below. And we're going to start this matchup right now. Starting off with our first matchup, Red Rising taking on Firefly Adventures. And one thing that I should note about this deathmatch and about these matchups is that there are so many IP games that are in the same universe. So Firefly, for example, has their own game, the Firefly Pick Up and Deliver game, right? If we look up Firefly, we look up Firefly the game. It could have been this one that just had a big thing, but I was trying to opt for things that A, my patrons voted for and recommended to be added to the match because they get first say, and B, things that should be known as the definitive game of that type. And if people objected, well, they could always write in a different game. They could make that game the official game to win them all. So we're only going to have one IP of each, and if you don't see your preferred game, well, drop it in the comments below as well and tell me why it should have been written in, because some tried to get written in, but none of them ever succeeded. Anyway, we have Red Rising taking on Firefly Adventures. Red Rising is a game by Stonemaier Games, so you know it's going to be good production value, based off of the fantasy book series by Pierce Brown, where there is this dystopian future, and essentially it revolves around card play. There are 4 different scoring conditions. You're getting up on this track, you're trying to add the most cubes to this area, and you're trying to have the people in your hand who are the best people, who like being around people, and give you the best effects. On your turn, you're going to play a card, which will let you do an action. There's always like swapping of cards and getting resources depending upon where you put them, that sort of thing, just trying to get the most points. Firefly Adventures, Brigands and Browncoats is a cooperative mission-based skirmish-level miniatures war game. That's right, this isn't the sandbox one, this is the minis war game out there. I think people were mentioning that the core of this game experience, it has to do with your walking around casual or heroic. Casual, you can kind of just talk to people, you can get information, and then heroic, it means you're going to pick a fight with everybody who's out there. And this one came down essentially almost to a tie at the beginning. It came down to a flip of a coin, the roll of a dice between the two, but it was Red Rising that ended up going over Firefly in a 13-12 vote. I think between the two of these, I don't know. People were saying that this felt a little Zombicide-esque with some tweaks to it, which I think is nice. There is a simplicity about Red Rising here that seems interesting, but I'm not sure how much the back and forth of the card play would feel. It would feel really good to have these cards and be getting a ton of points, but people were also saying that it was their favorite implementation of the Fantasy Realms rule set, sort of based off of that rule set. So there you go, getting your combo building game. And it is the combos of Red Rising that does move forward. All right, next up, we have Batman the Animated Series Adventure, Shadow of the Bat. That's a mouthful, taking on Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood of Venice. Now, I'm going to be having a full review of Assassin's Creed coming up. I've played my way through that entire campaign because they sent it my way. They sent me the big collector's box my way, so I can talk pretty confidently about that one. I've never played Batman the Animated Series, but it's based off of the IDW Games miniature adventures sort of system that they have, which I just love. Instead of I'm Batman, soy Batman. And I think the Spanish Batman is way better than English Batman, let's be real. I'm Batman. Or soy Batman. I mean, come on. There's no compare. Now, another Batman game that got some love, that tried to be a write-in vote, was Batman Gotham City strategy game, Gotham City Chronicles, or Gotham City strategy game. There's probably two different things. There are two different things. We have Gotham City Chronicles and we have Gotham City strategy game. It's this one, the Gotham City strategy game, that was getting some love and a shout out, as you play as one of the villains competing for control by planting your henchmen around Gotham. With each turn, you're playing a plot card from your hand, which gives you money or information tokens depending upon who owns that particular district. Trade in money and information to achieve higher villainy status, and you can level up with asymmetric abilities. And then finally, near the end, sooner or later, you're going to have to battle Batman. This one sounds great, actually. That's pretty cool. But unfortunately, it didn't get any love. It came down to a competition between Batman Animated Series Adventure, Shadow of the Bat, and Assassin's Creed. Pretty close. However, I think it was talking about the dice sharing mechanic in Shadow of the Bat, and this Dark Knight mode. The Dark Knight character sheet is played in the solo mode. Batman receives the Soy Batman skill card in addition to his other chosen skills and gadgets. And you can get a bunch of gadgets, bringing your Bat gadgets into play in a nice dice chuck-in co-op game where you run around the board and you try to take out all the villains. You can see who the heroes, because they're painted, and who the villains are, each scenario being set up in a different way, with you having different obstacles that you have to deal with. And you can probably have a Batmobile, which you probably will enjoy having. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice is a sort of stealth game. If you have all the bling, you can raise things up so that you get levels. Essentially, you'll run around from rooftop to the streets, diving into the waters of the canals and trying to accomplish a series of missions as you proceed your way through a story that is sort of adjacent to the Brotherhood story. You're not playing as Ezio, you're playing as the assassins that Ezio calls on when Ezio does his little super move, the assassins that jump out. You're like, oh, you were the assassins alongside Ezio. Ezio was doing stuff, but you also were doing stuff. You're Bastiano, and you're the sneakiest person around. With Assassin's Creed, you will have 3 actions on a turn, and your actions can be moving a space, trying to stab someone, attacking somebody noisily, and there's 2 different alert systems. There's like a calm state where the guards are only going to patrol regularly, and then there's an alert state where more guards will be spawning. It's basically the level of spawns, essentially. And you have foreknowledge of where the guards are moving to, so you can kind of work to skirt around them and not fight them all, because then you'll die. This one was pretty close. Oh, sorry, Batman City Chronicles, you're dead. You're gone. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I expected it would go towards Batman because of the strength of the IP, but Assassin's Creed feels very thematic. I don't necessarily think it's that good a game, and you should absolutely never get any of these minis. The amount of time that you spend painting the minis is definitely over the amount of time you'll actually spend interacting with the minis. If you're ever interested in this is a little preview for my review. If you're ever interested in this, you should definitely not get the collector's edition. You should get the standee edition. But if you happen to have the collector's edition on your way, don't get discouraged. Maybe you'll love it. I'll try to be positive for you. I know one person who has the all in all the way. And I hope that you have a lot of fun. I had just an okay time. But I think the theme of this really sort of resonates as well. And the feel does feel nice. It kind of feels like a campaign game for people who aren't used to playing long campaign games. The scenarios are fairly short, too. I imagine they're shorter than Batman. But and the reason why I'm talking about it so much is because it is out of the competition. It is Batman that moves forward in an 18-14 vote. So moving along to the next one, we've got Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective, and taking on Jaws. I didn't realize until right now that Sherlock Holmes has been around for 42 years. That's an insane number to me. And it's ranked 163 still on Board Game Geek. That's cool. Sherlock Holmes is a consulting detective, and there have been a few of these out there now. I don't know when they came out with new ones. You are going through these 10 mysteries to solve, these 10 cases to solve, as you try to match Sherlock Holmes. Now, Sherlock Holmes has naturally solved all of these cases, and you are just trying to be as great as Sherlock Holmes. It's a very escape room style game as you go through and you puzzle against the board and see how well you can do. Kind of one-shots, but you get 10 one-shots in the package, and I think that's pretty cool. It's taking on Jaws, which also feels really thematic, especially because Jaws takes place with this sort of 2-act structure. You're going to have the first act on the land, where you're preparing for the Jaws to bite you, and the Jaws player will be running around doing other stuff. And then the second, oh my goodness, oh Jaws, what are you doing? Jaws, oh no. And then the second act takes place on the boat, where you are surrounded by Jaws. You can see how well you've prepared, and you both can have different bonuses, essentially. First act, Jaws tries to eat as many swimmers and beachgoers as they can, and you try to find Jaws. Second act, you fight each other to the death. I think both of these are kind of exciting. I might give it to Sherlock Holmes here, just because I've heard really good things, but I know both are really solid entries into this competition for sure. Jaws gets you that tension of recreating the hidden movement from the movie, not knowing where the shark is going to strike, and Sherlock Holmes giving you that brain-burnery puzzle. And so this one was really close. It came down to a 17-15 vote between the two, and I think a well-deserved battle. But eventually it is Jaws and perhaps the Sharknado gifts that help move it forward in a 17-15 vote. Moving along, we have Resident Evil 3, the board game, taking on a Game of Thrones, the board game. So many of these IP games end with the board game, so that you know it's the board game and not the real thing. Resident Evil 3, I picked Resident Evil 3. There were a number of different Resident Evil games I could have picked into this spot, and I expected Resident Evil, the deck building game, to actually get written in, and it didn't. Some people mentioned it in the comments and then just voted for Resident Evil 3, which I admit, this whole write-in fantasy of mine failed miserably in this way. But Resident Evil 3, you're going through, oh, this is a cool setup. You know, you're going through each level, scenario-based game. Again, you have a certain number of movements you can do. You're going to open doors. You're going to search for things, get enough ammo, try to kill the residents and the evils, as my landlady does whenever she bursts into my room while I'm sleeping and performs an exorcism on me. But you can run around. I like this, having the doors in this picture, because the door mechanic is a significant one in Resident Evil. You can kind of scope things out. You can listen in. You can burst through the door. But once the doors are open, then the evils will start to chase you, which I think is pretty neat. You can creep around the corners too. You're going to be exploring these maps. Sometimes they're not predefined. And it's also just a fun world to run around in and hope you don't die. Hope you run down the corridor and slam the door so that you can keep out all those zombies out there who can't use their opposable thumbs. And Game of Thrones, the board game, seeks to replicate the drama, the intrigue, the bran of it all in a Game of Thrones. This is a game where it says it plays 3 to 6. I've only played it at 5 and 6. I played in that higher player count, and most people want to, because it's a game all about negotiations. Very long game. You're going to take one of the clans. See this House Stark in the top. You have the Greyjoys maybe over here. I don't know. I know I allied with them in one game, and we just ran the game. And the key to Game of Thrones is in each province where you have stuff, you're going to put tokens down. And these tokens could be like move, they could be attack, they could be bolster, and you can make any deals as you want around the table. You're like, listen, I'm putting my defense here. I'm just like getting resources. It's fine. And then you can move in and backstab. There's no official alliances in place, but alliances will form around the table as you all vie for the iron or the sword throne. The Iron Throne? Is that what it's called? The Westeros throne. So it's a big game about negotiation, again, capturing, I think, again, both of these are good entries into this competition. I feel they both kind of capture the IP, right? The spooky, scary running away and fighting versus the getting mad at everyone and not ever having a satisfying ending. I mean, I haven't seen the ending. I don't really care. I don't care one way or the other. I like to give myself points. I like to give myself internet points by saying, yeah, the ending's bad. Or nerd points. I hated it too. When, like, I don't know. I thought the whole series was kind of silly. I never finished it. Anyway, it is a Game of Thrones that ends up moving forward, which is a bit surprising to me. I thought they're both kind of just fine games, but yeah, it's Game of Thrones that moves forward 15-9. Moving along, we have Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia. That's Kaman's Masters of the Universe taking on Star Trek Frontiers, which is basically a reskin of Mage Knight. Those are our two for the Masters of the Universe. And for Star Trek, I mean, there's a bunch of Star Trek games out there, but we chose Star Trek Frontiers because it is a favorite of somebody in the Patreon and in the Discord. That's just how it works. And I've heard it's fantastic. Like, anything that's re-implementing Mage Knight, which has been in the top 100 on Board Game Geek for the longest time, is for sure to be a good game. Master of the Universe, Kaman's version of Masters of the Universe did look better to me and more interesting than the other Masters of the Universe. This is a one versus all game style of game where one person will play the Overlord and everybody else plays the Masters, I guess. Yeah, those masters, and the silly big old plastic toy of Grayskull, just so you can have a big old plastic fortress on your board for no reason. But my favorite part about this, or in theory, especially when reading through the rule book, was the idea that on your turn, you're going to be spending points or action points, and you're going to be garnering up these kind of special points, and you can use them. But if you do, then the Overseer or the Overlord then gets to have those to spend on special actions. So I like that balance of flow. It really incentivizes you to use your points effectively, and if they're going to be worth more than the Overseer itself. I think that's really neat and interesting about that one. Star Trek Frontier, I mean, just getting a Star Trek sandbox where you run around and do whatever Star Trek-y things you want, and you can do it both with Picard and Sisko and Martok, the big three. Oh, and Lursa and Bator, the big five. I think that all sounds pretty neat. I have yet to play my Mage Knight. I gave it to my friend Zach to play over the summer in the hopes that he can then teach me when I come home, and I don't have to learn it because I know it's like super annoying to learn. But there's a bunch of different scenarios in here. You can have competitive, cooperative scenarios or solo scenarios as you go through the galaxy, exploring ships, or exploring universes, sending your ship out, exploring galaxies, exploring the stars, seeking out new life to infinity and beyond. All of those as you search for glory. Oh, wow. And it's a tie now when I look back. It is an actual tie. It is 19-19, but I don't think it was a tie when I called the vote. But there was points that the starting decks of your ship captain feel very much like your ship captain. And it did come down to a tiebreaker, 19-19. So many people used their extra votes. You get one extra vote to use throughout the competition, and if that game wins, then your extra vote is considered as being used. So it's a way for you to really support and champion the games that you love, and then not be penalized if it doesn't win, right? You get that bid back, essentially. However, one of these games had one more extra vote, one more passionate fan behind it. The He-Man gifts were strong, stronger than the Gowron gifts for glory, and unfortunately, one that I thought would be in the competition just based upon the Mage Knight system. I thought it couldn't be overrun. It is Star Trek Frontiers that is out of the competition, nobody wanting that 240 playing time, and Masters of the Universe that moves on into the next round. Next up, we have Eldritch Horror representing Cthulhu and any of the Lovecraft mythos taking on Attack on Titan, the deck building game. Oh, baby, I wonder which one's gonna win. Let's talk about Eldritch Horror first because it's about to burn forever, and then I can talk once more about the incredible game that's probably out of print, but if you see it on the secondary market for like 30-40 bucks, you should get it. Hands down, nobody should pass up that opportunity. I love that game so much. It's my number 2 game of all time. Eldritch Horror is sort of the shorter, better version of Arkham Horror. That's what a lot of people say. I haven't played Eldritch Horror. I've only played Arkham Horror, but they play in a similar way with similar tentacles. You know, they play with my tentacles in a similar way. That's what I'm trying to say. You'll have an encounter phase each turn where you have to overcome an encounter and develop your person's backstory, and then you'll run around the map trying to make sure that the Ancient One doesn't awaken, but in fact you can face them and lock them away or murder them for good. Murder all the old gods. There's going to be these gates that are constantly popping up and spewing out monsters, and you have to deal with them while collecting investigation tokens, which you can then use to help thwart or uncover the Ancient One. Getting a bunch of different cards. Dice checks, stat checks happen a lot. You can get blessed so that your success is no longer a 5 and a 6, but it's a 4, 5, and 6. So your successes on murdering people are a lot higher as you run around the board, the Eldritch Horror board, and collect those tokens and murder everything in your path in a shorter way than in Arkham Horror. Eldritch Horror says it takes up to 4 hours. Well, 2 hours to 4 hours, and Arkham Horror will take like 4 hours to 6 hours. Attack on Titan, the deck building game, like I said, is my number 2 game of all time. I love this game so much. I have a full review on the channel. Essentially, it is a deck building tower defense style game. I love Attack on Titan, the anime. It's one of my top 5 shows of all time, just in general, with humans or with animated humans. It is so scary, but these titans will be appearing on the outside of the wall, and you will be collecting heroes cards to add to your deck on the inside of the wall. And so it's just a standard deck building game where you have power and you have to sort of buy these cards off. However, it has a movement element to it, which I just love so much. You have to be in the space in order to deal damage. And some Titans have restrictions. It's like, hey, if you're in this Titan space, you can't deal damage to it unless you've moved a ton this turn. And so trying to balance those two resources, or feeling really cool saying, okay, that's fine, I'll pull back, I'll fire my cannon in this space, it won't add to the tally of the damage that I'm allowed to do, then I'm going to move in, play my swords, which gives me a boost because I'm in a Titan space, and then attack it for like 4 damage. The flow back and forth is really fun. I really love playing any type of game in this. Often you'll have to have a support deck and an attacking style deck, essentially. And that's something that people may not enjoy, but I just I love building up. I love spending time with all the characters. And yeah, it's a friggin' home run for me. Whoa, Sheena. Whoa, Rosa. Whoa, Maria. Oh, that's a sweet mat. Oh, cool. You don't need to play mat, but that's a friggin' cool mat if you wanted it. Yeah, it's fantastic. It is so good. And I think I've emailed Cryptozoic so many times being like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. What can I do to help you get this game in print more? Tell me the entire history of this game, please. I want to know everything about it so that I can do everything I can, or if I can get people excited about it, we can have another printing, we can have an expansion. Oh, baby, if we got an expansion where there were, evil humans popping up on the inside of the walls, that would be so cool. It's great. It's just so great. And I'm so happy that at least it wins one round. And it was very close, but Attack on Titan moves forward in a 14-13 vote. I can do one more quickly before I gotta go do something else. We've got Dune Imperium taking on Aggretsuko, Work Rage Balance. Now, I think you know how this one's gonna go. But it's actually a 15-13 vote, so you may not. Dune Imperium, Dune Imperium. It's a worker placement deck building game. It's very good. It's very fun. Dune Imperium Uprising is also very fun. You might as well get that if you don't have the two and you were deciding between the two because it's the updated version. I only have Dune Imperium because that's what the World Series of Board Gaming has. But I've played now all the expansions and all the different iterations, and they all are fun. They all give me kind of equal levels of fun, personally. I really like the balance of placing your workers down and having the cards in your hand needed to go to these faction tracks and not just go to the bad spots that you need at the beginning of the game and then you don't need them any other time. But does it feel thematic enough, right? We're talking about best IP games. I think you could slap a different theme on Dune Imperium very easily. There's a little battle element. There's a bunch of different, sure, you're going on to the planets. Like Paul Dennett is a big Dune fan, and the people who had the Dune license are big Clank fans. And so they reached out to him to be like, hey, make a game. And it was a really nice synergy for them. But I think that you could just slap a bunch of stuff on this and it could be a different game. Maybe not. Maybe people who know the characters better than me can tell me if the actual character cards and what they do, who is your daddy and what does he do, have an effect. But I think you could slap on a different IP. Aggretsuko is a game about getting out of work as quickly as possible. You're trying to rid the cards in your hand. It lasts 5 work days or 5 rounds where you're trying to get these out of your hand to find a good work-life balance. Or sorry, a work-rage balance. It's kind of like Scout, essentially. It feels a bit like Scout. You're going to be laying cards down. If you ever played Scout, you're playing them in runs or in pairs. And in order to get rid of your cards, people have to like pay more cards on top of it, essentially. But it's obviously Dune Imperium that's going to move forward. It's a great game. Aggretsuko just drew a real short straw and had no chance of moving forward. But it did very well, and it moves forward in a 15-13 vote. I should say Dune War for Arrakis got some love, but it didn't get enough, and so that's why it's Dune Imperium that moves on. Okay, moving on to the next round, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer game, the 2000 Buffy the Vampire game, which very specifically was requested, taking on the Reckoners. Brendan Sanderson. We got the first book. Is that the first book in here? I don't know. I don't have my bracket up anymore. I would assume it's the first book. Nope, just kidding. We started with Red Rising. This is a very old game where you have to patrol the board, collect cards and gain powers, roll dice to fight and cast spells, finally rid Sunnydale of evil to win, but don't slack or evil will slay you first. Comes with a pewter Buffy icon. Oh, look at that. For the round tracker, I assume. As you run around on the board with your little standees, I assume that's your magic power and that's your fighting power. Let's assume it is, because Willow's more of a magician. And you can punch and kick or stab with that dice. There were people talking about the Buffy Unmatched game and the Buffy Legendary game, but none of them got written in. And I think the reason I didn't pick Unmatched for anything specifically is because Unmatched just kind of works for everything. I don't think you can really call it the best IP game because it is a mishmash. It's like a card system, right? A collectible card system. And so there's really no chance that Buffy's going to win here, especially because I've heard that the Reckoners plays kind of similarly to Marvel United. I don't know if this is them running across the board. Maybe not. Oh, I guess. Look, there's a circular board with different areas, different villains that you have to defeat in each area. Nice production, really. Yeah, you win by defeating Steelheart, but first you have to discover his weakness. So you have to go around to the different spots on the board to research the weaknesses, but then you also have to manage all of the other epics that are, attacking the board. Feels very Marvel United. I've heard it being put forward as a good alternative to Marvel United as well. You can see these different locations that you're running around in as you develop the weaknesses, and maybe some nice dice rolling too. So Buffy does get a good push, a surprising push for a game that I am very certain is not good at all. But it is the Reckoners that moves forward 15-10. We're going to keep it going with Disney Villainous taking on another Disney IP, Star Wars the Deck Building Game. Villainous is a game that I have never really enjoyed. You have your own player board. This is, so say you're Jafar and you have to win. Like, you're the villain, you want to overthrow Aladdin. And you have to search through your deck to accomplish a certain task. When I played as somebody from Hercules, I had to kind of move very slowly, move all of my Titans to a spot, and if I did that, I won. However, the crux of the game is that it's kind of action selection, but you can screw with other players. And so I can basically take an action that lets me slow down another player. It just feels like enormous take that. It might be good at 2 players, but I just have never had any fun with Villainous. And even that cat doesn't look like they're having fun. And they're playing the easiest character, the Queen of Hearts. There's a huge disparity in between the amount of turns it takes to complete your objectives, the ease at which your character can accomplish their objective, and it just overall, I don't think is a fun game, but the benefit of this is that it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what the community thinks. It's facing off against Star Wars, the deck building game, where it is a two-player head-to-head battle, where you can see the cards will come out in this row, and if it's turned towards you, generally it's a card that will help you, and if it's turned towards your opponent, it'll be a card that'll help your opponent. There's Rebel, and there's the Imperial cards that are beneficial, but you can buy either of them. It just depends on if you're buying it to add it to your deck, or if you're buying it to deprive it from your opponent. And then you're going to punch each other in the face, whittle down the health of your main base, and the person to not die wins. Luckily, I feel very vindicated looking at these votes. I was really surprised that Star Wars the deck building game even ended up staying in here. I thought Star Wars Outer Rim would get a shout, which somebody referenced but didn't write in. I thought Star Wars Imperial Assault, I thought Star Wars Rebellion might get a shout, but everybody voted and they didn't care about any of those other Star Wars games. They said, no, Star Wars the deck building game is definitively the best Star Wars IP game out there because a new one hasn't been written in. It did win in a dominant 23-3 vote, though, and that makes me feel vindicated because I like seeing villainous burn, and I like seeing Star Wars move on. Moving along to two ones that I wasn't sure about including. We have Legendary Alien, and we have Kingdom Rush, A Rift in Time. Now, Kingdom Rush is based off of a mobile game, so it was kind of turning a mobile game into another game, and I think I kind of put this one selfishly in because I won the Elemental Horde from a Board Game Revolution giveaway, like way back before I was even a content creator, or just in the early days of being a content creator. I won an all-in copy, which is really cool. And I wanted people to talk about it and to talk me into it and say like, hey, this game is great, against a game that I have played and I have since gotten rid of as well. One, because my buddy Ryan has a copy and I don't need to have access to two copies. And two, because I think Attack on Titan has a similar flow to this game and does it better, or I will always sort of reach for that one, essentially. In Legendary Encounters Alien, but so many people reference this as being like the Alien game, although I guess you could have written in Nemesis if you wanted. But you have a market of cards, and you have a bunch of different cards that you got to get through. Come on, just give me a picture of the board. Yeah, ish. You have your board here, and you have your aliens that are slowly encroaching on the top. You can see how these are kind of face down, and you could scan them to see what's going to pop up that you're going to have to deal with. And then you also will add cards to your deck so that you can deal with that thing. It's a decent system. It's fine. And it's probably going to win against Kingdom Rush. Let's be real. Kingdom Rush is a tower defense game. Again, another tower defense game where you are throwing like polyomino down to wipe out advancing hordes of troops, and they'll be advancing on like little squares, and they're all like kind of small. Every character has their own asymmetric ability, and it seems like in our discussion we got sidetracked from talking about the games to talking about where humans would rank on a species deathmatch, and we all kind of agreed that unless we got a good matchup, a good round matchup, like against some sort of insect like a mosquito, humans would be out in round one. And I think I agree with that, because we're not that good. Wow, my 6-year-old boys managed to play for 3.5 hours without any breaks, and after that they asked if we can play one more. That's a like really huge, one of the best reviews I think I've ever heard, essentially. I'm excited to get this to the table. I'm not like actively excited though. I think it might be tough to get to prioritize this over something else that like I have a review obligation to do. And I don't have to worry about it because it's a Legendary Alien that moves on in an 18-5 vote. We didn't get a lot of votes for Kingdom Rush anyway, but that also could be because it's new and because of the strength of Legendary Alien. People like it as an alien game. Moving along to Mind Management, Mind MGMT, taking on War of the Ring. We have our Lord of the Rings IP in here, and we also have this, which I didn't realize came from an IP, but it comes from a comic book. And so people made that as a, oh yeah, this is a good one. Made that as a pitch, and I thought, yeah, of course, let's include it. We don't just have to do movies, IPs, or etc. Mind MGMT is a one versus all deduction game where you are basically running around this board trying to track down the hidden person, and the hidden person is incentivized to go and to make their pathway around the city to collect specific items or to touch specific items. So you can see the books are a little bit predominant on here. Say that was one of their items. They would want to trace their path. And so if you can figure out what items they're going for, you have a little bit more knowledge as to where they're going or what. I think I like Run a bit better in terms of Mind MGMT, but I've only played it once, so I would play it again for sure as you run around. It's kind of fun. You all have your own character, which have different actions, and there's roadblocks and stuff that come up. It's pretty neat. It's going to be hard to take on War of the Ring, which is ranked 8 overall on Board Game Geek. One of you is going to be Sauron, and the other of you will be the Free People, and you essentially have to get the ring to Mordor before Sauron just completely overwhelms you. The ring? Yes, the ring! Quick! Get it to Mordor! Don't just have it out there in the open. I've never played War of the Ring, but it is in the World Series of Board Gaming. We've got a little Wargaming Invitational off to the side, which I think is interesting. And so maybe I'll get into it through that, because I might have to do some coverage or something on it. So I might have to play it or take a copy home. But it seems neat. It's also, again, in that same theme of Star Wars Rebellion and Dune War for Arrakis. They're 3 very, very similar games in terms of that 2-player head-to-head, long, epic journey of trying to achieve your objective. One small ragtag group of heroes taking on an insurmountable army is kind of the theme. Oh, look at that little golem, little Schmeagle. Oh, there you go. Certificate of Authenticity. Can't print those out yourself. And so I wasn't sure which way this one was going to go here. I thought War of the Ring would take it, but I know Mind MGMT has its real big fans, and I figured that there might be some competition, and it ended up being pretty close, as everybody talked about their favorite part of Lord of the Rings, which of course is Tom Bombadil, and it is War of the Ring that ends up moving forward in a 17-14 vote, and with its certificate of authenticity and all. Moving along, we've got Fallout taking on Marvel Zombies. And I think we can assume that Marvel Zombies will just auto-win here, right? I picked Marvel Zombies as the Marvel IP. We could have had Marvel Champions, which I kind of expected to be written in. We could have had any other Marvel United, right? I kind of expected that maybe to be written in, but people wanted Marvel Zombies to represent their Marvel fandom. We'll talk about Fallout first, though. Fallout is just based on the video game Fallout, as you're going to begin on the edge of an unexplored landscape and have to venture forth from your vault. And there are a number of factions in this who will be vying for dominance in Fallout that you have to make sure don't get overly balanced, I think, as you go on. You want to complete your own quests, venture through, complete objectives, fight baddies, and make sure that you get the most special quest points, I guess, over your opponents. That's a nice ghoul. That's a freaking cool ghoul. Hey, anybody watched Fallout the show yet? I haven't. I heard it was fine. Should I watch it? I don't know. I tried watching Twisted Metal the other day, and I was really excited for that because I thought it looked very goofy and silly. And, well, it is very goofy and silly, but I don't know if it's sustainable enough to continue watching. Also, I don't really watch anything because I don't have time. Marvel Zombies is a zombicide game. You know this system, but you get so hungry as a zombie that you have to run over and eat a civilian before you can continue on with your objective. That's the theme of it. We also had a write-in for Comic Hunters for instead of Marvel Zombies, which is getting a reprint or getting a re-release with Arcane Wonders. It was only available in Brazil, and now it soon will be available everywhere, which I think is pretty cool. I've heard it's a very fun system as well, and it was fun to hear people talking about it, but it wasn't enough to overthrow Marvel Zombies. It's Marvel Zombies that moves forward into the next round. Next up, we have Wonderland's War taking on Seinfeld, the party game about nothing. This is, I think, the silliest matchup that exists right now. Let's talk about Wonderland's War first. This one is kind of exciting to me because currently I'm doing a production of Alice in Wonderland in the park in Halifax, Nova Scotia. If you want to see that, we're running all summer long. We'll also be doing 12th night. And so I played Wonderland's War for the first time in February at Level Up, and man, oh man, was it great. It's just so good. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should add that to the Rahdo's. We're gonna do a mid-year check-in over on Rahdo's channel for the R&R show, and this one maybe should be up there. I think I'll still stick with my Great Western Trail New Zealand as my favorite game that I've played this year, but it's really, really quite fun. There's two elements of this. You have a tea party scene, which is, again, fun for me because I'm the Mad Hatter and that's my scene, where you get, if I can just get to the board, come on. Thank you. Thank you. You have that tea party scene in the middle where you're going to go around and you're going to collect these cards. You're basically drafting these cards, which will give you battle power. And then you will go to the 5 battles and you have a battle there. You all have a bunch of strength and you keep on pulling chips from a bag. It's like Battle Quacks of Quedlinburg, pulling chips from a bag until you bust or you stop. And the person with the highest battle strength gets all the points in that area and gets to put a little castle down as well. Really, really fun game. The asymmetric powers are fun. The way you build your bag over the course of the game is really fun, and I quite enjoy the tea party scene. It's just a phenomenal game, and I might have to get myself a copy of it. I tried to ask them for a copy so we can do something while I'm doing Alice in Wonderland because we got the costumes, so I don't know, that might be fun. Seinfeld, the party game about nothing, is just a trivia game about Seinfeld. But all my sweet little schmoopies out there, you know, they wanted this to be included. You can see there's only one image because that's all you really need. You can see there's no reviews, no rating. Hello, is this thing on? And the thread is not available. It is the abandoned relic of trivia games and IP games gone by, but that came out in 2021. There's just everything about this is phenomenal. And I had quite a few schmoopies out there who wanted this to be included. Maybe for the Marble Rye Dexterity Challenge, like from the show, which, if you're a Seinfeld fan, you know, and if you're not, well, I don't know either. But yeah, that one's like, it's not going to win. It got more points, though, than Villainous. Like, it got more votes than Villainous. Even the push for Clue Seinfeld didn't still got more votes than Villainous, which makes me happy. But it's Wonderland's War that moves forward in a very dominant 24-5-3 vote. And then finally, we have Robinson Crusoe taking on Bounce Off. And I know what you're thinking. We'll get to Robinson Crusoe in a second, but we have to talk about Bounce Off. Because people don't know this, but Bounce Off was actually the very first Olympic game before the Olympics were ever a thing. You know, back in the day, have you ever seen The Road to El Dorado with the Mayan ball game, the little basketball game? It actually wasn't basketball. It was bounce off ball. That's true. It's an odd translation that got it changed, but bounce off can be heralded going back to all the sort of great inspirations back there as well. If you look in Aristotle or Plato's writings or Socrates, you will see the grids in the corner. And a lot of people weren't sure. They thought that this was a way of tabulating the pages or saying where these things fell. Recently, scholars have found out that all of these markings, these ancient markings that go back to all the great writings that have inspired generations of storytellers and generations of historians and generations of creators and creatives who have made all the things that you've seen in this Deathmatch, they actually came from Bounce Off. It was that original game, it was that original sport, it was that original relationship, right? Because stories and IPs, essentially these world building all comes down to the relationships that people have in this world. And there's no world so rich as the Bounce Off IP world. Even just speaking about Wonderland's War, Lewis Carroll was bouncing on balls the entire time he was writing Alice in Wonderland. That's why if you look at the original manuscript, it's really hastily scribbled. Battlestar Galactica, which got a bye in the round and will be coming up in the next round, their first title was Bouncelstar Galactica. And so because of this, because of its integral connection to anything on the list, like Red Rising, well, let me ask you a question. Where do you think the gold members from Red Rising come from? And why they're so elite? Comes from Bounce Off. So just because there have so many ties, unfortunately, it is Bounce Off that has to be ejected from the competition. And we have to add in 2 new competitors to take its place, again, representing that solid blue and yellow coloring. So fighting Robinson Crusoe is going to be Mechs versus Minions and the little-known spin-off to Mechs versus Minions, Gaming Trouble, the Despicable Me, the Minions board game. Because those Minions, like, they get up to so much trouble. I don't know if you've seen these movies, but they get up to an enormous amount of trouble. It's wild at which they do that. It's really just they're zany. They love their bananas. So I feel like that's going to cause a lot of problems for both Robinson Crusoe and Mechs vs. Minions. Robinson Crusoe, again, being that kind of sandbox, very cooperative survival game as you try to not die on this cursed island and achieve some of these objectives. You can see these are the older versions. And then Mechs vs. Minions, that game where you cooperatively program and pilot your mechs to defeat an army of marauding minions. I think the issue with Mechs vs. Minions here is that I don't really see a lot of paint jobs getting the colors correct. Like, it's always that blue and yellow for me. And when I go through the videos here and the images here, people just don't paint them in the right way, which probably is why Robinson Crusoe is able to take the vote here. I thought maybe Mechs vs. Minions would take it because I know people really like that game, but there were a bunch of people who threw in some extra votes to throw onto Robinson Crusoe and who've been really enjoying it and have been enjoying the updated packs as they've been delivered. And so it is Robinson Crusoe that moves forward in a 17 to 11 to only 2 vote. I'm surprised that only 2 people voted for this if we're talking about strength of theme versus strength of the IP, what else do minions do? They get into trouble, okay? They just are constantly getting into trouble. It includes 17 minion movers, one that is colored so that it looks good, and then the rest that aren't, to give you that creative freedom because we all like to paint. I don't know. I think it's worthwhile, but unfortunately it is Mechs vs. Minions and Minions both that are unable to overcome Robinson Crusoe, and it's Robinson Crusoe that moves on into the next round. So we're moving on. We're moving on to the round of 16, dealing with one of the 2 buys. We have the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, the adventure game, taking on Red Rising. Red Rising is back, and can it overthrow another video game system as you explore across Skyrim, seeking out different little objective points, going through a narrative story as you make your way across the land in a cooperative fashion. You're not competing to be the best of Skyrim, you're competing just to complete your way through these 2 campaigns that have 3 chapters in each one, and there's like a few more as you go through. It's an adventure game, so whenever you say adventure game, you think about that sort of sprawling and discovery and events that happen. And of course, lots of minis that maybe you'll only use once. Now, I feel like if Chip Theory games, The Elder Scrolls, hadn't been out yet, maybe that would be able to overthrow Skyrim. As it stands, Red Rising, people, again, were really resonating with the number of cards, the different cards representing the gameplay, the flux of the cards moving back and forth, and I think just liking the Fantasy Realm system. So it is Red Rising that moves forward and beats the Elder Scrolls. I'm kind of surprised about that, but Red Rising moves forward in a very, very dominant 17 to 4 vote. Nobody seems to care about Skyrim, so I don't either. Next up, we have Batman, The Shadow of the Bat taking on Jaws. We have that IDW system, dice chucking, sharing dice system as you beat all the villains on a specific map as you whisper to them, "Soy Batman," taking on the 2-act hidden movement game. And Jaws is feeling very thematic to me. I feel like Batman might get the win here because I know like people like Batman fandom more than Jaws because, well, you want to be Batman when you grow up. You don't want to be someone who needs a bigger boat. You want to be Catwoman, or you want to meet Catwoman in a dark alley. And with a friggin' bat signal, did you see that? I don't know if that comes in the game, but I'm sure that there are many ways to come in the game. As you go through these scenarios, reliving episodes from the animated series, which is kind of fun. But I think the strength of Jaws' mechanics and how they tie that together of the shark swimming is what makes it pretty close. It came down to a 13 to 12 vote. But ultimately, which do you think's moving on? Do you know? It is not Batman. It is Jaws that moves on. Kind of a shocker for me, but when I think about the mechanics, it makes sense, right? There's a generic run around as a superhero, or there's a really sort of involved theming here, and I think that's what Jaws does. Next up, we have a Game of Thrones taking on Masters of the Universe. For me, Having no real connection to Masters of the Universe, I like how the game plays, but I feel like thematically, Game of Thrones should win here. And I look back and it's tied. It's tied now. It must have come down to the die of chaos here. And this one is really close. Yeah, it was really, it came out to 13-11. I guess it should have been 13-12. Now there was an extra vote that was added for a Game of Thrones, which I think is very thematic to the show. There's lots of intrigue, there's lots of things going on, and ultimately none of that matters because only one person ends up on top, right? All of these 4 people's plans down here didn't matter because of these plans that happened up top and allowed the Starks to win in this version. But it is Masters of the Universe that ends up moving forward 13-11. I think we have a lot of Masters of the Universe fans, and I mean, say what you will about Kaman and their practices, but I think they make really, really solid games. I think they do. I think their systems are well thought out, and they're just generally fun, right? They've mastered that dice chucking fun in a way that is exciting, and yeah, Masters of the Universe is a beneficiary of that fun. Next up, we have Attack on Titan taking on, oh no, Dune Imperium? No! Oh no. I don't see how Attack on Titan beats Dune. I mean, I do see it because Attack on Titan, again, is the best. Like, I'm crowning it. If it doesn't win, it's going to win at the end. If it gets kicked out, I'm going to tell you it's going to come back and it will win at the end. I love this game. It's so good. I talked about it a bunch. Dune Imperium, I don't think has the thematic weight behind it to work. I think the base Dune game would be a better themed game of Dune, but nobody really wrote that in. People were pushing for Dune of the Ring. Dune War for Arrakis. And there were a lot of votes for Dune Imperium, but I'm looking back now, and it came down to a very close vote. When I'm looking at the votes right now, it's 14-13 for Attack on Titan. There is a die of chaos that fell for Dune Imperium, but there's also an abacus of terror, which you don't know about, but let me just tell you, there were some extra votes that got thrown onto one of these games, and it is Attack on Titan, the deck building game, that somehow defeats Dune Imperium and makes me so, so happy when the vote was called. It moves on in a 15-14 vote, and I cannot friggin' be happier. Attack on Titan is in the quarterfinals, baby. Moving along, we have Battlestar Galactica taking on the Reckoners. Honestly, it's been so long that I don't even know who wins this deathmatch, who wins the whole thing. I don't know, but I do know that the Reckoners will have a difficult time overthrowing Battlestar Galactica. I think whenever we talk about IP games, this is why I gave Battlestar Galactica the bye, honestly. I think I just gave it to them, or maybe it was random, and then I was like, oh, that's perfect. People talk a lot about Battlestar Galactica, and even though it has been rethemed as Unfathomable, people still like Battlestar Galactica a little bit better because they love the idea of the Cylons. They love the idea of those robots who are pretending to be humans, and how you might find out that you are a Cylon midway through the game. Some people don't like that because they find that it doesn't provide enough tension to the game, or it provides that the first half of the game you play is meaningless. And I get that. I get both sides of it. That you just basically play the game, maybe I'll be a Cylon, maybe I won't. I think if you play like that, you don't want to do it. You want to just pursue your win condition and assume it will stay that win condition and then try to pivot. I think that's the best way to enjoy this game. And so looking back, there were a lot of regular votes for Battlestar Galactica, but there were a lot of extra votes for the Reckoners. People saying that the IP is super unique, that it's worthwhile checking out. It's in sort of young adult style, but it's Brandon Sanderson too. People, again, highlighting that it's a better system than Marvel United. Lots of teamwork, tight management of nearly everything in the game. But the Battlestar Galactica fandom was too strong to overwhelm the comments about mechanisms, and it is Battlestar Galactica that moves forward in a 19-15 vote. Sorry, the Reckoners. You burnt. Next round, we have Star Wars, the deck building game, taking on Alien, Legendary Alien. This one is also a close one. Again, nobody wrote in anything for Star Wars. Nope. Nobody wrote anything for Alien. Well, I don't really think I guess there's Alien Fate of the Nostromo, but I heard that one wasn't that good. We have 2 deck building games, one that's head-to-head and one that's against the board. This one came down to the votes, and looking back, it's actually changed. The winner shouldn't have been what I called, but I called it this way, and it must have been the votes at that time, or maybe I'm just a liar, I don't know, but it is Alien that moves forward in an 18-16 vote. Star Wars the deck building game has been eliminated from the competition. I thought Star Wars, being a heavyweight IP, would stick around, but it does not, and it gets eliminated from the competition. Legendary Alien being the one that moves forward. Next up, we have a monumental battle. This is War of the Ring taking on Marvel Zombies. Oh, look at those paint jobs. That's cool. That's great with the little like touches of detail. That's sweet. Both of these are huge IPs. Lord of the Rings, Marvel. There have been countless, well, I guess you could count them, but so many shows of Marvel, so many movies of Lord of the Rings. We have the new Rings of Power show that's happening right now where Galadriel wants to bang Sauron. I'm pretty sure that's how it happens. And this one was a pretty huge back and forth. I am surprised at the result here. I expected one of these to win, and that's not the one that's going to win. I don't think that the theming of Marvel Zombies is strong enough, and yet it is Marvel Zombies that overthrows War of the Ring. War of the Ring is eliminated from the competition in a 22-19 vote. Marvel Zombies gets the nod and moves forward, taking War of the Ring out and all of the Lord of the Rings fandom. Sorry, Billy Boyd. Maybe the hobbits can ride to Isengard once more, but it won't be today. It's Marvel Zombies that moves forward. And then finally, we have Wonderland's War taking on Robinson Crusoe. And so this was a pretty low vote between these two. I expect Wonderland's War to win here over Robinson Crusoe, but, you know, the survival co-op not being as fun as the Battle Quacks Wonderland War. I think the randomness of the pulling from a bag also could be tied in, hypothetically, to the randomness of Lewis Carroll's writing style, which is no through line whatsoever. It's not a good book, but this is a good game. So maybe there's a little difference there. And so one through line of the conversation that was generated behind Wonderland's War and Robinson Crusoe was the feeling of loss, the feeling of the fires consuming the entire land of Lord of the Rings, the feeling of Isildur turning away from destroying the One Ring and succumbing to the flames himself. And in this unlikely turmoil, in this glorious struggle, in the desolation of Smaug, or whatever desolation happened before Lord of the Rings ever begun, there was one faint flicker of hope. The One Ring tries to make itself a comeback. The Fellowship of the Ring suddenly gets unified, and it is Lord of the Rings Journeys into Middle-earth, the first write-in option that happens just going off of the backs of what happened previously that makes its way into the next round. Unfortunately, both Wonderland's War and Robinson Crusoe do not have the staying power to fight against the Lord of the Ring fandom, even with Wonderland's War, again, being a fantastic game. And Robinson Crusoe, well, I've never tried, but I've heard it's fun. I mean, it's ranked number 92 on Board Game Geek. It's still got a very solid ranking. People like it a lot. And, oh wow, there's been a lot of shakeup here, eh? Search for Planet X has made its way in there. Sky Team, of course. Concordia Venus, yuck. And Age of Innovation is now in the top 100. That's wild. That's what we get for chunky solid games. But it is the Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth that will take up the One Rings challenge and fight for what is right as we head into the quarterfinals. Let's keep blazing through. We've got Red Rising taking on Jaws. The Howlers of Red Rising are rising up together, trying to take on the surprise attacks of the Sharknadoes. I didn't know Jaws' name was Tiberian. Tiburon, or we call him Lo Squalo. Yeah, that's a great name. This one comes down to a very close 15-14 vote, but it is Jaws that breaches the surface and bites out of nowhere and takes out Red Rising. Unfortunately, Red Rising is out of the competition. Not even Antonia or these judges or martyrs or justices or Tactus or Fletcher or Rogue or Orion or the Pax or Paris. Okay, cool. I thought, oh, wait, or the Pulse Fist Engineer or the Grave Boot Cobbler or the Razor Designer can fight against the power of a shark. Just a little shark fin and some barrels of oil. Yeah, that's how you kill a shark. You want to know how to kill a shark? Global warming. Sorry, Jaws. Or maybe that's why Jaws happened, because of global warming. I think it was that. It was one or the other. Let's say it was that. Well, moving on. So Jaws moves forward. Next up, we have Masters of the Universe taking on Attack on Titan, the deck building game. I don't think there's any way that Attack on Titan can lose this. In fact, looking back now, I see that Attack on Titan is still winning, which is fantastic, even with a bunch of votes being added. The only thing that could stop it from working out would be is if the dice of chaos fell into the wrong hands. And it would be a real shame is if I was tallying the vote and had to go away to rehearsal, that I rolled the dice and Masters of the Universe got a bunch of stuff. And now as the impartial commissioner, I could just ignore that and just lie. But I don't do that. I don't do that sort of thing. And so Masters of the Universe comes out on top, and even my plea for more votes obviously results only in one thing, which is the destruction of everything that I love and hold dear. Masters of the Universe, I don't think should even be here. What did it lose to? Or what did it win over? I forget. I think it should have been out in the last round, but it still makes a surprising run. Let me tell you, this is devastating to me because once Attack on Titan defeated Dune, I thought I was free and clear. I thought like, okay, Attack on Titan's in the finals, we're good. And it is Master of the Universe that moves forward. What's so amazing about this is that it came out after season 1, and so like the contents of it, if you know the anime, the contents of it and the card content and the characters really represents the state of things after season 1, which is really cool because it changes in season 2. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, go watch the show because I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's Masters of the Universe that spoils it for me though, and moves on in a devastating 17-15 vote. And then Attack on Titan came back with some extra votes, and then some more votes for Masters of the Universe came down. It ended up being 18-17 as the final, and it's Masters of the Universe that moves on, and I am heartbroken. So heartbroken, but we still have to move on. We've got Battlestar Galactica taking on Legendary Encounters, an alien game. I don't know what's going to win. I think Battlestar wins here. It's a close match looking back at the votes, but I think that Battlestar Galactica is the thing that's going to come out on top here. I think Legendary Alien is like a solid implementation of Alien, that idea of that creeping forward. But of course, if Attack on Titan, the better system, got eliminated, well, this one has to get eliminated as well. And plus, I think you could make an argument that Nemesis is a better Alien board game than Legendary. And so for that, I'm fine calling that Battlestar is the one that moves forward in a 17-11 vote. And then finally, we have Marvel Zombies, the Marvel Zombie Horde, with J. Jonah Jameson and Jake Gyllenhaal Jackelson taking on Lord of the Rings, Journey to Middle-earth. Journeys to Middle-earth is a campaign game. As you explore the map, you go on this journey, well, in Middle-earth. And you'll use a companion app that takes care of a lot of the upkeep. You'll be fighting the orcs, and you'll be fighting lots of stuff that comes up, and try to make your way across the campaign, and really helps you capture that exploration experience. Even if you didn't like the experience of War of the Ring, the two sides clashing, well, now you get to just go and explore and live in the world. This one came down to one vote. I think it's facing off against Marvel Zombies. The Hobbits want their revenge, and I think it is also potentially the benefit of a write-in vote that has happened here, that the fandom is pushing forward, versus the game that I expected to be overthrown by a write-in vote that I put forward just to, create discussion, but which again failed miserably. We had a spirited debate against these two fandoms. A huge vote that came down to 19-18. Only one of these can move forward, and surprisingly, it is. Oh, yeah, see, that's the app right there. Look how good it looks on the app and not in actual life. But it doesn't matter because it is Lord of the Rings that moves forward into the semifinals, and Marvel Zombicide is eliminated from the competition, which gives us our final four. A final four I never expected. We have Jaws taking on Masters of the Universe, taking on Battlestar Galactica, taking on Lord of the Rings, Journey into Middle-earth. I think I probably expected Battlestar Galactica, and I don't know. Masters of the Universe, certainly not. I expected Dune or Attack on Titan. I kind of expected Skyrim here, to be honest. And I thought Wonderland's War would make it. Well, there were a lot of good ones in this category, though. But I expected to see War of the Ring, and we do have a Lord of the Rings, but it is not War of the Ring. But we're going to get started with our semifinals right now. All right. Finally, we've reached the semifinals. We have Jaws taking on Masters of the Universe. This is the smackdown of the century, and this one came down again to a really close vote. I like close votes, right? Like I like there are two sides to every story, and one of them is the right side, and one of them is the side that destroyed Attack on Titan. I think it's great. I think it's really great to have both, two equally viable options, one being a good game and the other one that destroyed all of Chris's joy and happiness. I think it's really nice to have both of those things. And it doesn't matter that they might get melded at some point with AI art. Doesn't matter. What matters is that there is tough competition and that the winner won, which is Jaws, which moves forward in a 15-14 vote. I think the right winner is winning here. I think, sure, you get a bunch of the characters and they get to fight each other, but from a replication of like the movie perspective and the actual IP that they're deriving it from, I think Jaws' two-act structure is really, really cool in that sense. And it is Jaws that moves forward in that 15-14 vote. Now, to the other side of the bracket, we have a matchup where some people were saying that they were hoping that this would be the final matchup. Man, the art on this, like just capturing Adama's face, and so crisp and clean. Look at that. Look at that tasty, tasty ship captain. This is one where I'm not sure how this is going to go. I mean, like Lord of the Rings, where is Lord of the Rings? It's 96 or something? It's 118. I was pretty close. And then Battlestar is where? 101. So they're both very close on BGG in terms of ranking. A larger scale game versus a smaller scale game of exploring Middle Earth. I feel like Battlestar is the incumbent, though. Battlestar is something that people still talk about when in relation to IP games very consistently. And I think it also helps that it's the only Battlestar Galactica board game out there, right? Like you're hinging your Battlestar IP desires on that. Whereas Lord of the Rings, as we've seen, has a bunch of different IPs. Now, this one did overthrow Marvel, but it was unable to overthrow Battlestar Galactica. And it is Battlestar Galactica that moves forward in a 17-9 vote into the finals. Can Battlestar overthrow Jaws, or will Jaws just wreck it? Both a movie versus a TV show. What's better, movies or TV? That's the question that we're asking ourselves here. And which game will come out on top? Now, you might think that Battlestar would win this in a landslide. However, I will tell you that it is very close. And I will tell you, actually, that it is currently a tie. It is a tie. We have our first tie in the finals. Actually, I think we had a tie in the finals before, but nothing that was so heaped with competition on both sides. It's 18-18 in the tie right now, and both of these games kept on going back and forth from each other. The Sharks made a huge push, because the thing about Sharks is that they don't burn. Okay, the thing about Sharks is that they make music about their glorious victory. The thing about Sharks is that they are gonna bite down on Battlestar Galactica and overcome all adversity. And in fact, with the music playing beneath me, the official anthem of the Sharks, created just for this deathmatch, created just for Jaws, that almost swayed the voters, the AI art and the AI music, filling their souls with desire. However, there was one lone champion for Battlestar Galactica. Well, okay, there were 18, because there were 18 votes. But there was one lone champion who said, listen, if you help Battlestar Galactica win, if somebody out there switches their vote, I will go spend real money on the competitor. You will be supporting your game more than you could ever know. You will be supporting it in real life with real actual money. And that's exactly what somebody did. They switched over to Battlestar Galactica. They made it so it was a tie because Jaws was going to win. And then it switched over to Battlestar Galactica because of this. This one lone champion spent real money on the game, on this board game, to tie it up, and all the AI music and all the AI art couldn't fight against real commitment to the bit. Real monetary commitment to the bit. And so because of that, by the power invested in me, bestowed upon me, seconded by me, honored by me, and beset by me, I declare that the tiebreaker goes to Battlestar Galactica for spending real money on their competitor. Congratulations to Jaws. You are going to be the first, second place who is not burnt for all eternity because you are protected by the loving embrace of Battlestar Galactica fans. That is how it works. You've hitched your shark to the underbelly of their ship, and it is Battlestar Galactica with Jaws in tow that makes its way into the spot as the best IP game of all time. They overthrew Brandon Sanderson, the Reckoners. They said, books? We don't need books. books. They kicked out Alien in the face. They said, we're the only sci-fi game around here. They slashed Lord of the Rings' major comeback as they tried to make their attempt into the finals. And finally, they overthrew the Shark Army to become the #1 IP game of all time. Congratulations goes to Battlestar Galactica, our winner. Thank you everybody for watching. If you want to get in on the daily votes, you can do that by signing up for the Room and Board Patreon, just a couple bucks a month. Hey, you support the channel and you get to vote and participate in the shenanigans that happen every day, every dang day. I've been doing this for 2.5 years and we're not stopping now. Our one that's coming up next month will be the best 2-player game of all time. I'm excited to see how that's going to shake out. We're already sort of halfway through. And if you don't want to sign up, you can't afford it, that's okay. I understand. I'm just happy you're here. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and make all my little sweet dreams come true. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but I do have some shark music that I'll leave you with.
In the depths of space where stars align, a battle raged, a deadly sign. Jaws emerge from cosmic seas to crush the Cylons, bring them to their knees. Jaws, the terror of the night. In the starlit sky he took his flight. With jaws of steel and might so grand, he fought the Cylons, took a stand. Cylons came with lasers bright, but Jaws relentless craved the fight. With a roar that shook the stars, he ripped their ships, left brutal scars. Jaws, the terror of the night. In the starlit sky he took his flight. With jaws of steel and might so grand, he fought the Cylons, took a stand. You're gonna need a bigger boat, Jaws declared. In the fiery clash, no mercy spared. As ships lay wrecked in his wake, a legend fierce, no one could fake. Jaws, the terror of the night. In the starlit sky he took his flight. With jaws of steel and might so grand, he fought the Cylons, took a stand. Now tales are told in cosmic bars of Jaws' fierce fight among the stars. The Cylons crushed in victory sung, in space where Jaws' name forever rung. You're gonna need a bigger boat, Jaws declared. In the fiery clash, no mercy spared. As ships lay wrecked in his wake, a legend fierce, no one could fake. You're gonna need a bigger boat, Jaws declared. In the fiery clash, no mercy spared. As ships lay wrecked in his wake, a legend fierce, no one could fake. Now tales are told in cosmic bars of Jaws' fierce fight among the stars. The Cylons crushed and victory sung, in space where Jaws' name forever rung.